Welcome to KRA's The Hub, the official podcast of KRA Corporation. And now get ready to hear workforce topics and trends you need to know on the go.
Well, welcome back to KRA's The Hub podcast. I'm excited for today because really today's episode is a part of a series that we recently recorded at the 2024 Nod Up Youth Symposium. It was actually the 25th Youth Symposium put on by Nod Up. And I just want to start off today's episode by thanking the Nod Up staff for putting on another great event. This year's symposium brought a gathering, a collection of individuals in workforce development from around the country. And I think this year was one of the largest attended symposiums throughout the 25-year period. So it was a great event full of energy, a lot of great ideas that were shared both in the general sessions as well as many of the workshops. And as we've been able to do here at KRA over the last year is not only have conversations with influencers within workforce development leaders, but also attend some of the larger national conferences and also have conversations with folks there. And at this conference, I had an opportunity to sit down with several wonderful guests. Some of them were presenters at the conference. Others were leaders in workforce and also some exhibitors that were there displaying some really great technology. And so as you sit back and listen to these episodes in this series, I hope that you would glean from the energy, the ideas, the best practices that were shared at this conference. And as always, our goal is to make it relevant. And really this conference, again, was focused on youth services. So many of our conversations were focused on youth services and workforce development, strategies, technologies that are being employed currently, but also what's to come. As things are ever evolving within workforce development, the industry that we're in, how do we stay at the forefront of that? So again, I want to thank you for joining us here on KRA's The Hub, our podcast, and enjoy the episodes that we have here from our recent participation at the Nod Up Youth Symposium in Phoenix, Arizona.
So this is Jonathan Overall with KRA's The Hub podcast, and I am here today. This is day number 2 at the 2025 Nod Up Youth Symposium here in Phoenix, Arizona. And today I am joined by Rick Reckert, and our paths have crossed, Rick, several times over the last few years, and it's great to see you at today's conference.
It's good to see you. Every single time I come to one of these conferences and I see familiar faces, it's just a good connection, good opportunity to continue our network.
Definitely. I always tell people workforce development is a small industry, so you know your paths are going to cross. But I always see your workshop sessions on the schedule, and I know that I have to get in and see it, and know it's engaging. I know you're here at this conference also doing a couple of workshops. I definitely want to talk about that in today's conversation. But first off, let's start off by telling our audience, how did you get to where you are today? You have our Record Consulting, and you provide a lot of consulting and training within the industry. How did you get to this point?
Well, it's a very interesting story. I started the genesis of my journey in workforce development began as a youth participant. I was 15 years old, living in LA, in a city. I went to Crenshaw High School, so that's the area where I lived. And I had to take a bus on weekends for 2 hours from LA to outside of LA at the time we called the Valley. So it would be in the Pomona area. And my first job working at a state hospital. And at that state hospital, which was a huge compound. And I worked as a physical therapist assistant. I worked in the library, and I worked with the patients that were housed in this particular compound. And that was my first experience, actually, not only working in a controlled setting, but also getting a paycheck. And can you imagine at 15 years old, you're getting a paycheck, and you have to take that to the bank and cash it in, like, but also the case management aspect of the program, providing me with guidance and direction. That was valuable because it was a summer employment program, and it gave me that exposure outside of the environment which I lived in. And it kind of opened my eyes to different opportunities out there in terms of occupations. So that was my entrance basically into the workforce development arena. After that, went to college. While I was in college, I worked as a youth counselor at a boys' home. And that was an opportunity for me to kind of share some of my experiences coming up in an area that didn't have a lot of positive role models. And I recognized a lot of the young men that were in that environment were also housed in that particular facility. So I was able to connect with them and provide them with, a big brother type of approach, provide them with guidance and some advice. So I wore many hats in that environment. After that, completed college, and then got into the workforce. I worked in retail management, and I worked for different corporations. And during that stint, I had an opportunity where I could hire folks. So I'm the employer now, and as the employer, in one capacity, I had the opportunity to hire individuals, review applications, and make decisions whether you're going to be hired or not. One experience that I had, and I'll never forget, I had a young man that came to me, and all he showed up with was a piece of paper from his worker or the program that he was involved in. And he showed me the paper and said, "Hey, can you just sign this so I can tell my worker I was looking for work?" So it just kind of hit me that this individual didn't even have a desire to work. All he wanted to do is to check a box so that he could continue receiving whatever services or benefits he was receiving. And so I'm saying to myself as an employer, that's not someone I would want to hire. So that kind of opened my eyes in terms of, okay, some of these programs probably need to understand how their participants are actually representing who they are. So I'm like, wait a minute, what are they doing? A step further down in my journey, I get a chance to work for the state employment program agency, the Employment Development Department, EDD. And I worked as an analyst. I worked as a trainer or in the capacity building unit, and my responsibility was to build the capacity for the entire state with respect to the Job Training and Employment Act, and transitioning that act into what we considered a new act, which was the Workforce Investment Act. In the transition from one particular workforce program into another, there's a closeout, and then there's a ramp up. So during that transition period, I was responsible for writing the policy to close out one particular program and write the policy to ramp up a new program. The new program, the WIA, basically flipped workforce development on its head, and we had to build the capacity for the entire state. So for 2 years, I traveled throughout the state of California and visited just about every single workforce board. And prior to that, they were considered PICs, private industry councils, and that changed to workforce development boards. So the paradigm shift in terms of working from silos to now a co-location, one-stop environment, sharing resources, leveraging your resources, providing services to mutual customers, and understanding that one program has the exclusive rights to provide services to a particular customer. That was a concept that needed a lot of massaging, because now we're talking about, hey, I'm I'm in the sandbox and I have to play nice with other programs. And understanding that the focus is not on the program, the focus is on the client, the participant, the individual that comes to us and is looking for needs services. How can we wrap those services around that particular individual? So that was part of the growing pain that took place maybe about 2 years for it to finally take a hold. After that, I retired I moved on to another statewide program, which was the Medicaid program. And it was a promotional type of transition. And I was tapped on the shoulder to actually run the statewide Medicaid program, California. And in that particular capacity, I had a team, and our goal was basically to just expand access on school sites for individuals that received or were eligible for Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California. So if you have a student, as an example, a student in a particular school, and that school participated in the program, because it's a volunteer program, but it was a source of revenue for that school. And if that individual was eligible for Medi-Cal, and the individual received a service, a medical service that was covered by Medi-Cal, then the school could submit an invoice and we would reimburse the school up to 50% of the cost. So can you imagine the additional revenue potential for every school in California to just participate? And so my charge was to expand that program as much as possible. So we had, when I stepped into the position, we had maybe about 300 schools that were participating. We had 0 colleges that were participating. When I left the program, we had over 500 schools that were participating and over almost 1,000 colleges that were participating. So we grew the program exponentially. And that was, I consider that to be a significant impact in terms of reaching out to not only the educational system, but also providing an additional revenue source to those educational institutions, because those funds are definitely and desperately needed. So now, as I continue my journey, I'm a consultant. I do this on a full-time basis. And the charge that I have is just basically sharing my passion. And my passion is with respect to being a subject matter expert when it comes to performance management and performance accountability, because that was the piece that I took on when I was with the Employment Development Department in writing policy for the youth program and the adult and dislocated worker program. So understanding how performance works, what happens when you have an individual that comes into your program, you enroll that individual, you provide a cycle of program services, and then you decide to exit, or there's a point where the program services have been completed and you exit that individual. How do we measure the return on the investment? What happens after in the first quarter? Because performance is measured by the federal government and also by the states in quarter increments. So every 3 months or every quarter, you have an outcome or there's a shift in the program. So to determine whether the program was successful or efficient, we're going to look at how many individuals actually were employed, and for youth, not only employment, but also are they in education, meaning either they're back in school, either in secondary school or post-secondary school, or if they're in some type of training option, occupational skills training or advanced training. And those are the positive outcomes. And for youth, the outcomes are measured based on what are they doing, and it's got to be something positive. Not just are they working, but they're in school, are they in training. For the adult program, the focus and the primary goal is employment. So we're looking to see if they're employed in that second quarter after exit, and also in the fourth quarter after exit. Well, 6 months after they complete the program, and then 1 year after they complete the program. So it's a long-term attachment, or not necessarily attachment, but engagement in terms of retention services to ensure not only are they employed, but they continue their attachment to the labor market post-program participation after they leave the program. So and that's bringing full circle to what I bring to a particular workshop. In many cases, I may have a particular client that is having a challenge meeting their performance, and so usually I'll get a call after there's a problem. And so my first approach is to look at the results, and I look at the numbers, and I look at the outcomes. And then I kind of reverse engineer, and to me, garbage in, garbage out. If you have bad numbers, or if you're not meeting your performance goals, or your performance is just basically just non-existent, chances are there's a bottleneck at the entrance or the beginning part of the process. So I will take a look at that, do an analysis in terms of what's taking place. How are you conducting your intakes? Are there suitability issues? Just because someone is eligible may not necessarily mean that they're suitable for your program. What are the ramp-ups steps? What are the ramp-up steps that are being taken? Is your strategic approach to enrolling individuals in your program that are going to be successful entrants and successful exiters. So we look at that. Then we look at case management. How are we managing the goals for those particular individuals? Are there realistic goals? Are there goals that are attainable? Are there goals that we can actually manage and measure? What about skill sets that are being administered so that they can attain those skill sets in a progressive way that meets their plan, their individual employment plan in a progressive way? That's going to lead into either long-term employment or attachment to the labor market. Is going to lead into a credential that we can use that would give us a stronger attachment to the labor market in case something happens and they get laid off or they get fired. Because they have a credential, they can bounce back into the labor market. And then, wages, are they earning legitimate wages, or are they working towards a career path that will lead into a higher position or a higher wage position? So those are the types of things that I'm looking. And then in your decision making, when the plan services are completed, how are we staging those individuals so that we can do a post-exit, and then reviewing the outcomes, the actual numbers. Our goal is to make sure that we improve those numbers. And it's a whole system approach. It's looking at all the functional areas within that particular environment, and to make sure that we remove the bottlenecks. We clear up areas that need to be cleared, provide the capacity building and the training that needs to improve understanding, and understand strategically how do we then engage those individuals after they complete the program services.
That's great. Yeah. Well, Rick, I think you gave us a really good insight into how you've taken your background working with the state, looking at data, looking at performance, and really beginning to diagnose what are the challenges. Now, as it comes to your work as a consultant and even in training, how has your experience as a youth, especially in youth services — I know youth services are different today than they've been even in the last 5 years — but how does your experience as a youth that found a job, found a rhythm working, how does that impact your lens on performance and consulting in youth services?
That's a really good question, because besides performance, I also do several workshops dealing with youth and youth development. And in that particular aspect, we talk about case management. We talk about how do we meet youth where they are. My experience in dealing with youth in an institutional setting, I had the best training in just the interaction with those individuals. I understood that they all come from different backgrounds, but as a youth, you're basically looking for guidance and direction. So understanding how to tap into that, meeting them where they are, and then looking to find ways and opportunities to build and I'm doing a particular workshop that also addresses that. It's putting a positive spin on dysfunctionality, and the dysfunction sometimes becomes the standard, coming from an inner city environment where you may have not all the resources at home, where the base is home. That's where you're going to develop your trust. That's where love, that's where interpersonal communication and friendships and relationships begin. And if that is not a positive environment, and it's more negative than positive, and it's more dysfunctional, then that youth is going to navigate a dysfunctional environment as though that was a normal environment. And you take all of that baggage, and then you have to deal with the environment in which you live in. Now, in the environment that you live in, and I can just reflect back on my environment, if you do something negative, that's a positive. For example, you have someone that's being released from prison, they throw a party, versus someone who graduates from high school and there's no recognition. That in itself is dysfunctional. Or if you go to jail and you come out of prison, that's a badge of honor in that environment. And that's part of the reason why a lot of our young men or young individuals have nicknames. They don't go by their government name. So they have a reputation, and the bigger, badder that you are, the more reputation you have, more respect you have. So that's dysfunction. And you take that into a school environment or a work environment where there's no trust. There's negative behavior is recognized as a good thing, and then you take that into the classroom, and you're not going to be able to function.
I didn't get that.
And so, in looking at how they're able to navigate the educational system, and the educational system in most cases have a way of dealing with individuals who are not academically achieving, or they're falling behind. They put them in remedial classes or some type of continuation school. Well, that's not motivating, a motivating environment that's going to, spark, interest to really excel and succeed academically. So you take all that negativity and dysfunction into a relationship now. And so as a person growing up in a home environment where maybe physicality is being part of the norm for showing love, and you take that into a relationship, and then you're more abusive and abrasive in a relationship because that's how you introduce into love or affection or you relate in a relationship. And that in itself is dysfunction. So we look at ways in which we can peel those layers, understand the perception is that those are negative perceptions, and when they show up at our door, their account is overflowing with negativity. Their positive account is non-sufficient. So how do we start depositing into that positive account and start reducing the negative account, or at least build the positive account so that they can understand that I have self-worth, that I can accomplish something, that I have a future, I can plan goals. And how do we incorporate that into a case management? Well, you give them positive reinforcement. Every single step, and these are baby steps, you encourage, you recognize, you celebrate. Good job. You're doing great, And many times, I'm proud of you. Many times, these individuals don't get any positive feedback, no praise, no recognition. And so that in itself opens eyes, and people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. So in a situation like this is how you build that self-worth and that self-esteem in them, and continue with the guidance and continue with the care to help them be successful in life, not only through the program, but also after the program.
That's great. Yeah, I like that visual, tearing down the dysfunctions of life, building back up with positive. And I'm sure that really coincides with the different milestones within the program development, the career services that we're providing for our youth. And, I believe that is a great visual and illustration of what folks are dealing with in the communities that we're working with. Now, before we close, I want to hear from you. Obviously, you work and you see a lot, and we're here at a youth conference talking about youth services. If you were to summarize in 1 to 2 areas, perhaps that are keys. In our audience, we have a lot of folks that are either in leadership, running programs, we have people that are working on the front lines, providing youth services. What would you say are 1 to 2 keys in a program that is successful in providing the solution? Obviously, we're in a different generation now of youth services. As I said earlier, things change very quickly every 3 to 5 years, maybe even sooner. But what you're seeing right now, what would you say are 1 to 2 solutions or keys to a successful youth program?
That's a good question, because the generation, that the Gen X and the generation that we're providing services to now, or are going to be entrants into the labor force, we have to meet them where they are. Number one, that's understanding who they are, understanding what motivates them, understanding what's important to them, and understanding and also recognizing that they come with lots of talents. You have individuals that can put a website together. They may not necessarily are great students, but they have skill sets. So that's what we need to do, is understand that every young person that comes through our program is valuable in the sense that they bring something to the table. How do we peel the layers to find what is it that they are good at, and start looking at what their strengths are and building from that perspective? In many cases, we have this stereotypical idea of our young folks, and we concentrate on the negatives. But let's put the negatives aside, and let's look at what is it that's a positive, and then build from there. That's one thing that I would. The second thing is, or the other element is, there's an expectation for a positive outcome, and I'm a firm believer that you can create a positive outcome out of any situation. So, looking at the future in a positive with a positive eyes and positive lenses, everyone has an expected end for their life, for their future. Tap into that.
Yeah.
Everyone has a goal. What is it that they want to do? What is it that they want to accomplish? What is it that they want to be? And now, regardless of what it is, let's not put our own limitations on it. If that individual wants to be whatever they want to be, let's see how we can nurture that, and do some self-discovery for them, and provide them with the tools and the resources and the services needed so that they can accomplish those goals. Chances are someone's going to be more engaging if they're doing something they have a passion to do, or they have a goal and a desire to do. And that's part of it. Instead of having a cookie cutter approach that's not going to work, it may be a program design, but it's not a design that's individually based. And so we want to look at the individual and then build from that individual out, not from a cookie cutter approach.
Yeah.
Again. So,
yeah. No, that's great. I love that, because everybody has a why. They have a motivation,
Right.
what drives them, probably people in their life that are family or friends or a mentor that inspires them. And so case management and working with youth and really any age really requires to peel back and know the person, and know
Yes.
what motivates them and what's going to keep them on track when times are difficult and challenging.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Rick, I really appreciate our conversation, the work that you're doing. I'm excited to see the topics that you're presenting on here at this conference. Now, as I said, our audience is wide and far,
Mhm.
different aspects of workforce development that they come from. If they wanted to know more about you and your services, how can they find you?
They can email me at Rick, RICK record, record01@gmail.com. My phone number is 916-308-0972. I don't have a website. I had a website, but it got hacked. So I'm in the process of building another website, but that's going to come shortly. But that's the primary way of getting in contact with me.
Awesome. Maybe a good youth project.
Yeah.
Yeah. A website design.
Absolutely.
But hey, Rick, again, it's always great to connect with you, and I wish you the best with your presentations at the conference, and look forward to seeing you at the next conference.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Take care.
Be here. Appreciate it.
Always.
Thank you for listening to KRA's The Hub. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about KRA Corporation, visit www.kra.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.